The sledgehammer crashed through the concrete as Sarah demolished her own pool, sweat beading on her forehead under the scorching sun. She had every right to tear down what was hers, or so she thought. When Karen's shrill voice pierced the air, demanding she stop, Sarah laughed. But the laughter died in her throat when 3 police cruisers screeched into her driveway. Red and blue lights painting her face in alternating shades of guilt and defiance. What Karen had discovered in the property records would change everything Sarah thought she knew about her home, her marriage, and the life she'd built on lies. The concrete dust coated Sarah Mitchell's lungs as she swung the sledgehammer again, each strike sending tremors through her 42-year-old frame. The kidney-shaped pool that had once been her pride and joy now looked like a crime scene. Chunks of blue-painted concrete scattered across the pristine backyard like broken dreams. "That's it!" she gasped, wiping sweat from her brow with the back of her gardening glove. No more reminders. The pool had been David's idea. Everything had been David's idea. The house, the neighborhood, even the goddamn flowers she'd planted last spring. Now that he was gone, shacked up with his 25-year-old dental hygienist in Portland, Sarah wanted every trace of their life together obliterated. She raised the hammer again, muscles screaming in protest. The pool had cost them $40,000 3 years ago. David had insisted on the premium package, built-in spa, LED lighting, automatic cover. "We'll grow old together in this pool," he'd said, his arm around her waist as they watched the construction crew break ground. Lying bastard, the sledgehammer connected with a satisfying crunch, sending another section of coping into the deep end. Sarah had been at this for 6 hours, fueled by nothing but rage and the half bottle of wine she'd polished off at lunch. Her neighbors had been peeking through their curtains all afternoon, but she didn't care. Let them watch. Let them see what happened when a woman finally stopped pretending everything was fine. "Sarah, Sarah, what the hell are you doing?" The voice cut through her demolition-induced trance like a fire alarm. Karen Hutchinson stood at the fence line, her perfectly manicured hands gripping the wooden slats. Karen, with her HOA clipboard, and her color-coordinated workout clothes, and her husband, who still brought her coffee in bed after 20 years of marriage. "I'm renovating," Sarah called back, not pausing in her destruction. "Isn't that what you people are always going on about? Increasing property values. You can't just—" Karen's voice climbed an octave. "You can't just destroy a pool. There are permits, procedures, environmental concerns." Sarah laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. "Environmental concerns? It's my pool, Karen, on my property. I can do whatever the hell I want with it. Actually, you can't." The confidence in Karen's voice made Sarah pause mid-swing. She turned to face her neighbor, noting the smug expression that had replaced the initial shock. Karen had that look, the same one she wore when she'd caught old Mr. Peterson parking his boat in the driveway overnight, or when she'd discovered the Johnsons had painted their shutters the wrong shade of blue. "Excuse me, the pool," Karen said, pulling out her phone. "It's a permanent structure. You need permits from the city, environmental impact studies, proper drainage assessments. You can't just take a sledgehammer to it like some kind of ... vandal. Watch me." Sarah hefted the hammer again, but Karen's next words stopped her cold. "I'm calling the police." "You're what?" "This is destruction of property, Sarah, and considering the circumstances of your divorce, I think the authorities might be very interested in what you're up to." The sledgehammer slipped from Sarah's grip, clattering onto the broken concrete. "What circumstances? What are you talking about?" Karen's smile was poison-wrapped in suburban politeness. "Oh, didn't you know? The whole neighborhood knows about the investigation, about the missing money from David's practice, about why he really left town so suddenly." Sarah's blood turned to ice water. "There's no investigation. David closed his practice to start over in Portland. I told you that. Is that what he told you?" Karen's laugh was like glass breaking. "Sweetheart, your husband didn't leave you for another woman. He left you holding the bag for $2 million in embezzled funds from his partners. And now you're out here destroying evidence." "Evidence of what?" "The pool renovation loan, the one he took out in your name, the one that was supposed to be paid back with money from the practice." Karen's eyes glittered with malicious glee. "The practice that's now under federal investigation for fraud." Sarah's knees buckled. She grabbed the pool's edge for support, not caring about the rough concrete scraping her palms. "You're lying, am I?" Then why did Agent Rodriguez from the FBI visit your house last week while you were at work? Why did your bank freeze your joint accounts? Why do you think David really gave you the house in the divorce settlement? The world tilted sideways. Sarah thought about the bank's phone calls she'd been ignoring, the certified letters she'd thrown away unopened. The way David had been so eager to sign over the house without a fight. She'd thought it was guilt. She'd thought it was his way of trying to make amends. He wouldn't, she whispered. He would. He did. And now you're out here with a sledgehammer, destroying the one thing that might prove your innocence. Karen held up her phone, the screen glowing with a partially dialed number. The police are going to love this. Sarah's vision blurred with tears and rage. You spiteful bitch. I'm a concerned neighbor. There's a difference. The sound of sirens in the distance made Sarah's stomach drop. 3 short wails growing closer. Karen's smile widened. I may have already called them, Karen said sweetly. I was so worried about you, Sarah. So concerned about your mental state, destroying property in broad daylight, acting erratically, clearly in distress. I thought you might hurt yourself. I told them you were having a breakdown. That you were destroying evidence that you might be dangerous. 2 police cruisers rounded the corner, their red and blue lights casting long shadows across the suburban street. Sarah watched in horror as they pulled into her driveway, watched as uniformed officers stepped out, hands resting casually on their weapons. Sarah Mitchell, the lead officer, was young, maybe 30, with kind eyes that didn't match the authority in his voice. We need to talk to you. Sarah looked at the demolished pool, at the sledgehammer lying in the rubble, at Karen's triumphant face glowing with satisfaction. She thought about David, probably sitting on a beach somewhere, laughing at how perfectly he'd set her up. She thought about the house she'd fought so hard to keep, the life she'd tried so desperately to rebuild. And then she thought about the lockbox hidden behind the water heater in the basement, the one David didn't know about, the one containing every financial document from the past 5 years, the one with evidence that might just save her life. Officers, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. I think there's been a misunderstanding, but you're absolutely right. We need to talk. About my husband, about this pool, and about the $2 million Karen seems to know so much. About the color drained from Karen's face as Sarah's words hit their mark. The concerned neighbor act crumbled, replaced by something that looked remarkably like panic. I don't know what you're implying, Karen stammered. Don't you? Sarah picked up the sledgehammer, noting how the officers tensed. Because I'm starting to think you know a lot more about my husband's business than any neighbor should. And I'm wondering how exactly you found out about that FBI visit when I never told a soul. The lead officer stepped forward, his radio crackling with static. Ma'am, I need you to put down the tool. Sarah set the hammer down slowly, her eyes never leaving Karen's face. Of course, officer, but first, I think you should know that my neighbor here has been watching my house very carefully, taking note of who comes and goes, almost like she's been keeping surveillance. That's ridiculous, Karen protested, but her voice cracked. Is it? Then how did you know about the pool loan? How did you know about the FBI? How did you know about the investigation? Sarah's voice grew stronger with each question. Because either you're psychic, Karen, or you've been talking to someone who has a very specific interest in my husband's activities. The officer's expression shifted from routine domestic call to something more serious. Ladies, I think we all need to have a conversation. Inside, right now, as they walked toward the house, Sarah caught Karen's reflection in the patrol car's window. The woman was texting frantically, her fingers flying over her phone screen, but she wasn't texting the police or her husband or anyone else in the neighborhood. She was texting David. Sarah's lips curved into the first genuine smile she'd worn in months. Karen had just made a fatal mistake, and Sarah was going to make sure everyone knew it. Officer Martinez's radio crackled as they settled into Sarah's living room, the afternoon sun streaming through windows that still held David's fingerprints on the glass. Sarah perched on the edge of her couch, watching Karen fidget with her phone like it contained nuclear launch codes. Ma'am, put the phone down, Martinez said firmly. We need your full attention. Karen's fingers froze over the screen. You were just texting my husband, Sarah interrupted, weren't you, Karen? The silence stretched like a taut wire. Karen's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the flush creeping up her neck. I don't know what you're talking about, Show them the phone, Sarah said. Show them who you were texting. Officer Martinez extended his hand. Ma'am, I'll need to see that device. You can't just. Karen's voice pitched higher. Don't? I have rights. This is harassment. Actually, Martinez said, his tone shifting from routine to investigative. If you've been in contact with a person of interest in an ongoing federal investigation, we have every right to examine that communication. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. Federal investigation. Martinez nodded grimly. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm afraid your neighbor is correct about one thing. Your husband is under investigation by the FBI for embezzling funds from his dental practice. What she didn't mention is that we've been looking for him for 3 weeks. The room tilted. Sarah gripped the couch cushions, her knuckles white. 3 weeks. He missed his scheduled interview with federal agents. His last known location was Portland, but he never checked into the hotel reservation he made. His credit cards haven't been used since he left town. But he calls me, Sarah whispered. He calls to check on the house. 2. When was the last time you actually spoke to him? Sarah's mind raced backward through the weeks of pain and anger. The phone calls had been brief, always when she was distracted. His voice had sounded distant, hollow. She'd attributed it to guilt, to the awkwardness of their separation. She stopped, ice forming in her stomach. Oh God, Mrs. Mitchell. The calls. They weren't. He wasn't actually talking to me. They were recordings, pre-recorded messages. The realization hit her like a physical blow. That's why he never responded when I tried to interrupt him. Why he never answered my questions directly. Martinez leaned forward. How long have you been receiving these calls? Since the day he left. Every few days, always the same time, always the same. Oh, Jesus! Sarah pressed her hands to her face. He's been gone this whole time, and I didn't even know. Ma'am, I need you to focus. Has anyone else been asking about your husband? Anyone besides Mrs. Hutchinson here? Sarah looked up at Karen, who had gone white as printer paper. No, just her. She always seemed to know things about David that I didn't. About his schedule, his clients, his business dealings. And how exactly did you know about the FBI visit, Mrs. Hutchinson? Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I saw them. From my window. Our records show that Agent Rodriguez conducted a discreet inquiry. No marked vehicles, no badges visible, no identification of law enforcement to neighbors. Martinez's voice hardened. So either you have superhuman eyesight or someone told you about that visit. I want a lawyer, Karen said suddenly. The words hung in the air like a confession. Sarah stared at her neighbor, the woman who'd organized every block party, who'd brought casseroles when Sarah's mother died, who'd helped her plant tulips last spring. Karen, Sarah said slowly, how long have you been working with him? I'm not working with anyone. Then why do you need a lawyer? Martinez asked. Mrs. Hutchinson, I'm going to ask you one more time. When was the last time you communicated? With David Mitchell, Karen's phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times. The sound seemed to echo in the suddenly quiet room. Answer it, Martinez said. No. Ma'am, I can get a warrant for that phone in about 20 minutes. Or you can cooperate. Now, and maybe we can work something out. Karen's hands shook as she unlocked the phone. The screen lit up with message notifications. Sarah could see them from across the room, all from the same contact, David. Sarah breathed. He's been texting you. Show me, Martinez demanded. Karen held the phone out like it might explode. Martinez took it, his eyes scanning the screen. His expression grew darker with each swipe. Jesus Christ, he muttered. Mrs. Mitchell, you need to see this. Sarah moved to look over his shoulder, and what she saw made her stomach drop through the floor. Message after message dating back months before David left, before the divorce papers, before everything fell apart. Meeting went well. She doesn't suspect anything. Pool demo, starting tomorrow. Make sure she's distracted. FBI came by, told her like we planned, she bought it. Keep pushing the breakdown angle. Mental health hold might be our best option. Sarah's vision blurred. A mental health hold? Martinez kept reading. Mrs. Hutchinson, according to these messages, you've been receiving $500 a week to monitor Mrs. Mitchell's activities and report back to her husband. That's not it. Right here in black and white. Bank transfers, meeting locations, detailed reports about her daily routine. Martinez looked up at Sarah. "Ma'am, your husband has been orchestrating this entire situation. The divorce, the pool, even your breakdown today. It's all been planned." Sarah felt something crack inside her chest. Not her heart that had broken. Weeks ago, something deeper. Something that had been holding her together through months of betrayal and humiliation. "The pool," she said quietly. "What about it?" He insisted on the pool. Said it was for our future together. But he knew. Knew he was going to leave. Knew he was going to frame me for his crimes. He wanted that pool loan in my name because she looked up at Martinez. Because he needed me to have debt. Something that would make it look like I was desperate enough to steal. Martinez nodded grimly. "And when you started destroying the pool, it gave him the perfect excuse to have you declared mentally unstable, unable to stand trial." "But why, Karen? Why would she?" "Money," Martinez said simply. "According to these messages, she's been paid almost $15,000 over the past 6 months. And there's more." He scrolled through the messages. "She's been documenting everything. Your moods, your drinking, your emotional state, building a case for your mental instability." Sarah turned to stare at Karen, who was now crying mascara-streaked tears. "You've been my friend for 8 years. Sarah, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But Jim lost his job, and the medical bills from my mom's cancer, and David said it was just temporary, just until he could get settled. And you believed him? You believed a man who stole $2 million from his own partners. He said you'd be fine. He said the insurance would cover everything, that you'd never even be charged, that it was just about buying time. Time for what?" Phone buzzed again. Martinez glanced at the screen, and his expression went stone cold. "Mrs. Hutchinson, your friend David just sent you a message. He says, and I quote, 'Phase 3 starts tonight. Make sure she's alone.'" The words hit Sarah. Like a physical blow, Phase 3. Martinez was already reaching for his radio. "This is Martinez. I need backup at 1247 Elm Street immediately, and get me the FBI field office on the line. Now." Sarah's mind raced. "What's Phase 3? Karen, what's Phase 3? But Karen was sobbing now, her carefully constructed suburban facade crumbling, like the concrete Sarah had spent all day demolishing. "I don't know. I swear I don't know," he just said, ... He said if you didn't break down on your own, he'd have to help you along. The front door exploded inward. 3 men in dark clothing burst through, moving with military precision. Sarah screamed, diving behind the couch as Martinez went for his weapon, but he was too slow. The first man hit him with a taser, dropping him to the floor in convulsions. Sarah Mitchell, the leader, said calmly, as if he were delivering a pizza, "You're coming with us?" "No." Sarah scrambled toward the kitchen, but the second man blocked her path. "Karen, help me." But Karen was gone. The woman who'd orchestrated her downfall had vanished the moment the door burst open, leaving only her phone behind on the coffee table, still buzzing with messages from David. The last one made Sarah's blood freeze. "Welcome to Phase 3, sweetheart. Miss me?" Sarah's bare feet slipped on the kitchen tiles as she lunged for the knife block, her fingers closing around the handle of her 8-inch chef's knife just as the second man rounded the corner. His eyes widened at the sight of the blade, and, for a split second, she saw something she recognized in certainty. "Lady, put the knife down. We don't want to hurt you." "Bullshit." Sarah backed against the granite counter, the knife extended between them. "You just tasered a police officer. You broke into my house. You're not here to talk." The man's earpiece crackled. "Status report. Subject is armed," he said, never taking his eyes off Sarah. "Kitchen knife. She's cornered." The leader's voice came through clearly. "Bring her unconscious, if possible. Unconscious, if necessary." Sarah's mind raced. The kitchen had 2 exits the way she'd come, now blocked by earpiece guy and the back door leading to the patio. But the patio was a dead end, just the demolished pool and a 6-foot fence. "Unless, ... you know what?" Sarah said, forcing her, voice too steady. "You're right, I'm being ridiculous." She slowly lowered the knife. "David sent you, didn't he? Is he okay? I've been so worried." Earpiece guy relaxed slightly. "Ma'am, just put the knife on the counter," and Sarah spun, hurled the knife at the kitchen window. The glass exploded outward in a shower of glittering fragments. Before earpiece guy could react, she was diving through the shattered opening, landing hard on the patio stones. "Runner," he shouted into his radio. "Subject is mobile." Sarah rolled to her feet, ignoring the cuts on her arms from the broken glass. The backyard was a disaster. Zone chunks of concrete, twisted rebar, and the gaping hole where her pool used to be. But the hole gave her an idea. She could hear them coming through the back door as she slid into the empty pool cavity. The broken concrete provided cover, and more importantly, it hid her from view. She pressed herself against the deep end wall, listening to their footsteps on the patio above. "She's not here," one of them said. "Check the neighbors' yards." "What about the pool?" "It's demolished. Nothing but rubble." Sarah held her breath as footsteps moved away. She counted to 30, then carefully climbed out of the pool and crept toward the back fence. The elderly couple next door, the Kowalskis, were snowbirds. Their house had been empty since March. If she could get over the fence, going somewhere, Sarah froze. The leader stood 10 feet away, his weapon trained on her chest. Up close, she could see he was older than the others, with graying hair and the kind of calm confidence that spoke of military experience. "You're good," he said, "but not good enough. What does David want?" "What he's always wanted, for you to disappear." The words hit her like a physical blow. "He's going to kill me. Eventually, but first, he needs you to sign some papers. Transfer the house, the remaining accounts, a few other assets. Then you're going to have a tragic accident." Sarah's mind reeled. The house is worthless. The mortgage is underwater. The pool loan was forgiven last week. Turns out the contractor had some irregularities in his permitting. Insurance paid out the full amount. The man's smile was cold. "Your husband is very thorough, so he gets the house, the insurance money, and I disappear." "What about the embezzlement charges?" Hard to prosecute a dead man's grieving widow, especially one who clearly had a mental breakdown and took her own life in despair. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. "You sick bastard. It's just business, lady. Nothing personal. It's personal to me." The sound of sirens in the distance made both of them freeze. The man's earpiece crackled. Multiple units approaching. 2 minutes out. "Change of plans," he said into his radio. "We're going mobile. Bring the van around back." Sarah's heart hammered. Once they got her in that van, she was dead. She had maybe 90 seconds before backup arrived and 30 seconds before the van got here. "You know what I find interesting?" she said, backing slowly toward the pool. "What's that?" "David hired you to kill me, but he's been missing for 3 weeks. How exactly are you getting paid?" The man's expression flickered. "What are you talking about?" "The FBI told me. He missed his interview, disappeared completely. His credit cards haven't been used. His phone's been off." Sarah took another step backward. "So either you're working for free, or ... or what? Or you're not working for David at all." The man's weapon lowered slightly. "You're stalling. Am I trying to figure out why Karen Hutchinson has been paying you instead of my husband?" The man's face went white. "How did you—" "The bank transfers. Officer Martinez saw them on Karen's phone. $15,000 over 6 months. All to the same account. An account that doesn't belong to David Mitchell." The sirens were getting closer. Sarah could hear the van's engine in the alley behind the house. "You want to know what I think?" she continued. "I think Karen killed my husband. I think she's been running this whole operation from the beginning. And you idiots are working for a suburban housewife who's in way over her head. That's impossible, is it? Where's David's body? Where's the $2 million? And why is Karen the only one who seems to know what's happening?" The man's earpiece crackled. "Van's here. 30 seconds. Move," he ordered. But Sarah could hear the doubt in his voice. "Ask her," Sarah said. "Ask Karen where David is. Ask her why she needs me dead, if David's alive to claim the insurance money. Shut up. Ask her why she's been living in a $500,000 house on a teacher's salary. Ask her why she knew about the FBI before I did. Ask her." The man's radio exploded with static and shouting, multiple voices all talking at once. Sarah caught fragments. ... FBI raid. ... Hutchinson residence. ... 3 bodies in the basement. ... The weapon in the man's hand wavered. 3 bodies. Sarah's blood turned to ice. "Oh God, David." The man pressed his earpiece. "Command, what's your status?" "Command is compromised," came the reply. "FBI has the house." They found Mitchell, his dental partner, and the contractor. All three shot execution style. Hutchinson is in custody. The weapon fell from the man's hand. Jesus Christ, she played us. She played all of us, Sarah said quietly. The question is, what are you going to do about it? The police cruisers rounded the corner, their sirens wailing. The man looked at Sarah, at the approaching vehicles, at the radio still crackling with reports of death and betrayal. I'm going to disappear, he said, and if you're smart, you'll let me know. What? You were going to kill me. You were going to help her destroy my life, steal my home, and murder me in cold blood. Sarah's voice hardened. I'm not letting you walk away. The man lunged for his weapon, but Sarah was faster. She kicked it into the empty pool, where it clattered among the broken concrete. The man cursed and started after it, but Sarah was already moving. She grabbed the garden hose from its reel and wrapped it around the man's neck as he bent over. The pool edge, he thrashed and clawed, but she held on with the strength of pure rage, pulling him backward until he lost his balance and toppled into the pool cavity. The impact was sickening. The man's head struck the broken concrete with a wet crack, and he went limp. Sarah stood at the pool's edge, breathing hard, as the police flooded into her backyard. Officer Martinez was among them, his face grim but alive. Mrs. Mitchell, are you all right? I'm fine, she said, though her voice shook. But you need to check on him, I think. I think he's badly hurt. Martinez climbed into the pool and knelt beside the man. After a moment, he looked up at Sarah. He's alive, barely. What happened? Sarah looked at the chaos of her backyard, at the demolished pool that had started this nightmare, at the blood on her hands and the cuts on her arms. She thought about David, dead in Karen's basement, about the woman who'd smiled at her over coffee just that morning, who'd been planning her murder while they discussed the weather. He fell, she said simply. I guess karma has a sense of humor. Martinez studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Yeah, I guess it does. The FBI field office smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams. Sarah sat in interview room B, her bandaged arms resting on the metal table, watching Agent Rodriguez flip through a file thick enough to choke a horse. 3 hours had passed since the arrests, and she still felt like she was living in someone else's nightmare. Mrs. Mitchell, I need you to understand the scope of what we're dealing with here, Rodriguez said, settling into the chair across from her. Karen Hutchinson isn't just your neighbor who got in over her head. She's a professional what? Con artist. Identity thief. We've been tracking her for 7 years across 4 states. Her real name is Catherine Hoffman, and she's wanted in connection with 12 deaths and approximately $6 million in insurance fraud. Sarah's coffee cup slipped from her numb fingers. 12 deaths, husbands mostly, a few business partners. All of them died in accidents or apparent suicides after signing over their assets to their loving wives. Rodriguez leaned forward. Your husband was supposed to be number 13, but David embezzled the money. David didn't embezzle anything. Catherine did. She'd been skimming from his practice for 18 months, using her position as the office manager to forge his signature on checks and transfer funds. When David discovered the discrepancies, she killed him. Sarah's world tilted sideways. Karen worked at David's office. She applied for the job 2 years ago under a false identity. Excellent references, impeccable credentials, all of it fabricated. She specialized in insinuating herself into the lives of successful men with assets worth stealing, but she was married to Jim. They lived next door for 8 years. Jim Hutchinson died 6 months after they moved in. Apparent heart attack. Very convenient for a woman who'd just taken out a life insurance policy on him. Rodriguez slid a photograph across the table. This is what he looked like when we found him in her basement. Sarah couldn't look. She pressed her hands to her face, trying to process the horror. 8 years. She's been living next door to me for 8 years, and I never knew. She was good at her job. Patient, methodical, completely believable. She spent years building her cover. Identity, becoming the perfect suburban neighbor. The kind of person no one would ever suspect. The casseroles, Sarah whispered. When my mother died, she brought me casseroles every day for a week. She sat with me while I cried. She helped me plan the funeral. She was gathering intelligence. learning about your family, your finances, your emotional vulnerabilities. Everything she needed to eventually destroy you. Sarah felt sick. How long has she been planning this? Based on what we found in her house, at least 3 years. She has files on you, David. Your marriage, your finances, even your medical records. She knew about David's anxiety medication, his sleep patterns, his daily routines. She knew exactly when and how to approach him, and David never suspected. She was his office manager. She had access to everything: patient files, financial, records, appointment schedules. She knew his business better than he did. When she started stealing, she made it look like David was the one covering his tracks. Rodriguez opened another file. She planted evidence in his office computer, forged documents with his signature, even created fake email accounts to make it look like he was communicating with offshore banks. By the time she was done, David looked guilty as hell. So when he confronted her, double quotes, she killed him, made it look like he'd fled to avoid prosecution. She even hired actors to make those phone calls to you to maintain the illusion that he was still alive. Sarah's head spun. The dental hygienist in Portland doesn't exist. Catherine hired a woman to use David's credit cards in Portland, establish a paper trail, then disappear. She wanted everyone to think David had run off with another woman. But why frame me? Why not just take the money and disappear? Because you were the loose end. As David's wife, you had legal rights to his assets. If you started asking questions, demanding answers, you might uncover her theft. She needed you either dead or discredited. Sarah thought about the months of gaslighting. The way Karen had slowly poisoned her against David made her doubt her own sanity. The breakdown? She was trying to drive me crazy. Exactly. If she could have you declared mentally incompetent, she could contest David's will, claim the insurance money, and have you institutionalized. No one would believe the word of a woman who'd had a complete mental breakdown, and if that didn't work, plan B, murder disguised as suicide. Grieving wife, overwhelmed by her husband's betrayal, takes her own life. Very tragic, very believable. Sarah's hands shook as she reached for her coffee. How did you catch her? We didn't. You did. Rodriguez smiled grimly. When you started demolishing that pool, you forced her to accelerate her timeline. She got sloppy, made mistakes. The texts to her hired muscle, the phone calls to coordinate your kidnapping, we were monitoring her communications. You were. Watching her? We've been watching Catherine Hoffman for 2 years. We knew she was operating somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, but she was very good at staying invisible. It wasn't until your neighbor complained about the pool that we connected. Karen Hutchinson to Catherine Hoffman. Sarah stared at him. My pool complaint? You filed a complaint with the city about unpermitted renovations? Routine stuff, but it triggered a background check on all property owners in the area. That's when we discovered that Karen Hutchinson's Social Security number belonged to a woman who died in 1987. Jesus, we were closing in, but we needed proof. When she hired those men to kidnap you, she gave us everything we needed to make the arrest. Sarah thought about the demolished pool, the sledgehammer, the moment she'd decided to tear down the last remnant of her marriage. If I hadn't destroyed the pool, she would have killed you within a week, maybe made it look like a drowning accident. Very fitting, don't you think? Sarah's laugh was bitter. So destroying my pool saved my life, in more ways than one. Rodriguez closed the file. Mrs. Mitchell, your husband was a good man who was murdered by a sociopath. The money she stole from his practice will be returned to the insurance company. The life insurance policy she took out on you will be voided. And the house? I don't want the house, ma'am. Sarah stood up, her legs shaky but her voice steady. I don't want the house. I don't want anything that reminds me of her. Sell it? Donate it? Burn it down? I don't care. I just want to be done with this nightmare. Rodriguez nodded. Where will you go? Sarah thought about the lockbox in her basement, the one David hadn't known about, the one with her grandmother's jewelry, her mother's savings bonds, and the deed to a small cabin in the mountains that had been in her family for generations. Somewhere she's never been, Sarah said. Somewhere she can't follow. Mrs. Mitchell, Rodriguez said as she reached for the door. For what it's worth, you did good. You survived something that killed 12 other people. You should be proud. Sarah paused, her hand on the doorknob. Agent Rodriguez. Yes. When you interrogate her, when you ask her about the murders, about David, about all of it, ask her one question for me. What's that? Ask her if she ever felt anything at all. When she brought me casseroles, when she helped me plant flowers, when she sat with me while I cried, Sarah's voice hardened. Ask her if she ever felt even a moment of guilt for what she was planning to do to me. And if she says no, then you'll know exactly what kind of monster you're dealing with. Sarah walked out of the FBI office and into the late afternoon sun. Across the street, she could see the Channel 7 news van, the reporter already setting up for the evening broadcast. By tomorrow, the whole world would know about the perfect neighbor who'd been a killer all along. But Sarah wouldn't be watching. She'd be driving toward the mountains, toward the cabin where her grandmother had taught her to fish, toward a life where she could finally stop looking over her shoulder. Behind her, through the FBI office windows, she could see Agent Rodriguez walking toward the interrogation room, where Karen Hutchinson, Catherine Hoffman, whoever she really was, waited in shackles. Sarah hoped the monster would finally tell the truth, but somehow she doubted it.